Hi, it's Dwyer, GamblersAdvisory.com, here with some post-fight thoughts on Robert Guerrero's victory over Selcuk Aydin. We'll pronounce it Aydin. Let me just say, Robert Guerrero delivered, right? He used combinations and a jab with a better inside game and body attack to beat Selcuk Aydin. The jab allowed him to start fast. Understand what a jab allows you to do is to literally land more punches than your opponent while you're trying to figure him out, right? It allows you to take the slow rounds in the fight. And that's what Robert Guerrero did. He jumped out to a lead. He seemed to run out of gas to me. He showed some ring rust after 15 months outside the ring, but he was able to have enough after building up a huge lead, and he was able to flash enough combinations, even in rounds in which he got hit flush with right hands. He was able to have enough activity to take some of those rounds. The closest scorecard had Guerrero winning the fight by a very wide 4 rounds. But, and let's have a but, because Guerrero wants to fight Floyd Mayweather. He is Mayweather's mandatory at 147 pounds. And before we get too excited, understand that Mayweather also has the belt at 154 pounds thanks to his victory over Miguel Cotto. So Mayweather actually has mandatories in more than one division. But I think that everyone who's rooting for Robert Guerrero needs to be concerned by the number of right hands with which he got hit. It was too many. They also need to be concerned by the fact that Guerrero throughout the fight looked like he was open for uppercuts, right? In other words, Guerrero, I was expecting him to use length a little bit more and to avoid getting hit, to time his entry points so that he wasn't vulnerable to getting hit with right hands. And I also thought that he would, of course, defensively, even when he's throwing combinations, be prepared for the right hand, since that's Aydin's primary weapon. Instead, it looked like Guerrero wanted to duke it out with Aydin. It looked like he thought that Aydin's body was wide open for him. He also sensed that when he was in the inside, he had the much better inside game. In fact, he was able to smother Aydin's power. Aydin has a great right hand, but it's a right hand he has to throw from distance. And I believe Guerrero figured out that if he got close, he could neutralize the power in that right hand. That's what he tried to do. He paid a price for it. He did get hit, in my opinion, far too much in this fight, which he did win by a decent margin. Now let's talk about Selcuk Aydin. Your idol is Mike Tyson, right? If Tyson, and keep in mind, Tyson had a short prime. Let's talk about Tyson just from the mid to late 1980s. And let's not get into Tyson in the 1990s when I feel he was past his prime. Let me also point out, too, before I get a bunch of messages saying, well, Tyson was still a young man. You know what? Boxing's a tough sport. Sometimes fighters, quite frankly, are past their primes by the time they're 24, 25 years old, right? A boxer really only has a certain number of rounds in him. And some fighters, too, rely on things like reflexes that they might not have as they get older, right? Let's talk Prime Tyson. And the Prime Tyson we're talking about is the Mike Tyson who dismantled Trevor Burbank, the Mike Tyson who had guys like Bone Crusher Smith hugging him for dear life, The Mike Tyson who beat Tony Tucker, the Mike Tyson who took out Michael Spinks, the Mike Tyson who, quite frankly, was one of the best fighters in heavyweight history. It's a short window. Let's talk about that Mike Tyson. Right now, if Selcuk Aydin is going to pattern himself after Mike Tyson, and Aydin calls himself Mini Tyson, then what he's going to have to learn to do better is he's going to have to learn how to smother combinations, right? There's a reason that Bone Crusher Smith was hugging Mike Tyson. It's because that Mike Tyson had you on the clock. He was always coming inside. You didn't have time to keep Mike Tyson at the end of a combination, right? Take a look at Tyson against Terrell Biggs, right? You didn't have time to keep Tyson at the end of a combination. Tyson was literally coming inside, pressing the issue, getting inside your combinations, right? You were faced with a choice. Get run over by Mike Tyson or hug him, right? That's the choice that Aydin has to give his opponents, right? What you can't do is what he did in this fight, where you're getting hit by a combination. You're not close enough to your opponent, and you're not forcing the issue enough to smother the combination or have the opponent abandon the combination to hug you. And of course, when there is a hug, you have to make it where the opponent has to hug you completely. You can't allow the opponent to hug you and have a hand free like Guerrero had a hand free, right? If you're going to get hugged inside, and this is part of fighting inside, you have to find a way to either have your opponent completely wrapped up where he can't throw a punch, or make the opponent want to completely wrap you up, right? If he has a hand free, you need to have a hand free, and you need to know what to do with that hand. Now here, it seemed like Guerrero sensed that in clinches, Aydin wouldn't throw punches. Guerrero would always have a hand free. And because Aydin is really one-handed, right? It's a big right hand. He does have a bit of a left jab, but he doesn't really throw it that much, and it can't knock you out, right? He's not throwing hardcore power punches with his left. It's a right hand. Guerrero would come in, tie up his right hand, then would have a hand free and would be battering Aydin with it. Now the point is this. You're playing to the judges, right? Guerrero already has the superior jab, so he's already throwing more volume than you. If he looks like when you clutch, he's still able to hit you, that undermines you with the judges. The thing with Mike Tyson is that everyone knew Bone Crusher Smith was holding on to him, not vice versa, right? So when Tyson got inside and Bone Crusher grabbed him, right? Bone Crusher looked like a coward. Mike Tyson looked like he was the one dictating the action. That's not the case if a Tyson gets inside, Bone Crusher wraps him up, and then starts pounding him with his power hand. The problem with that dynamic is then it looks like Tyson's getting duped. It looks like Bone Crusher is actually strategically dictating the action, that Bone Crusher is being more effective. That's the way it looked here. It looked like Guerrero on the inside was able to tie up Aydin while still hitting him. Aydin needs to look at the film, and he needs to figure out how to remedy that problem. He can't have that become the blueprint on the inside of how to deal with him. Let me also point out too that on the inside, take a look at Mike Tyson, Brian Nielsen. This is older Tyson. This is post-prime Tyson, right? When you're on the inside and the guy is trying to tie you up, you need to let your hands go. What Mike Tyson did to Brian Nielsen is, as Nielsen's trying to hold him, Tyson's going to town on Nielsen's rib cage, right? And Tyson's able to do it because there's a height dynamic, right? Plus, Tyson knew how to use that height dynamic to his advantage. He would fight low. He would come in low, right? Taller guys, and Guerrero was taller than Aydin. Taller guys have a problem trying to tie up shorter guys, especially guys who know how to fight low, who bend their legs, who are moving, right? You have to reach over to try to grab him. In those moments when the guy's inside, the guy needs to let his hands go. Not only does that build up points because you're landing punches on the guy's midsection, but it makes it harder for the guy to actually tie you up. Take a look at Manny Pacquiao against Oscar De La Hoya, right? Manny Pacquiao comes in, he starts flurrying, he starts throwing punches to De La Hoya's body, right? De La Hoya can't think about just tying up Manny Pacquiao because he has to defend the punches to his body. Brian Nielsen against Mike Tyson couldn't really tie up Mike Tyson because Tyson was going to work on his rib cage. Let me also say, too, that Aydin needs to shorten his punches. In other words, when you're on the inside and you're being tied up, you have to be able to throw punches. He needs to work on that. The match can't be where I'm trying to land a bomb from, let's say, mid-range. And if the opponent gets inside of mid-range, then I don't really have a lot going on, right? It can't be that. At one point, and I thought it was a great point, on the Showtime telecast here in the United States, Al Bernstein, an excellent boxing analyst, was lamenting the fact that Aydin couldn't take a step back to throw more uppercuts, right? Aydin needs to think about one of two things. Either he needs to learn to take a step back when the guy is trying to tie him up, right? So he can continue to do damage. Or he needs to learn to throw that uppercut when the guy is right up on him, right? But he can't do what he did yesterday, where it looked like Guerrero gets in close, Aydin just gives up trying to throw the uppercut as he's getting tied up. Right? That shouldn't be the case. Let me also point out that there was a great fighter, one of my favorites from the 1980s, Mike the Body Snatcher McCallum. Great fighter. And McCallum would be measuring out punishment. He'd be hitting you, roughing you up. And as you reached forward to tie him up, McCallum would literally knock your hands down. Right? He would literally punch at your arms to knock them down because he didn't want you tying him up. McCallum wanted you tired. He wanted you unable to rest. He wanted to dole out more punishment. Now in this fight, where Guerrero's stamina seemed to be faded, right? And keep in mind, he's a guy who hadn't fought for 15 months and is fighting 2 weight classes above 135, right? He's fighting at 147 for the first time in his career. Where you have a guy who's tiring, right? And you're coming on in the later rounds. Don't be fooled by the judges' scorecards. Aydin was coming on in the later rounds. Why would you allow Robert Guerrero to tie you up? Why would you accept the clinch? Wouldn't you want him to keep fighting? After all, he's the one who needs the rest, not you. Right? And so, if Aydin's not going to throw a jab, and if he's going to give away the early rounds, in the later rounds, He needs to find a way to not have his opponent take breaks, to not have his opponent tie him up, right? Not just because he doesn't have power up close, right? Aydin likes a little bit of distance to operate, likes to throw that right hand at mid-range. Not just because he doesn't have power when he's being clinched, but because he doesn't want the other guy to take a break. He should have been doing what he could to have a tired Guerrero get even more tired, right? He should have been pivoting. He should have been knocking down Guerrero's hands. In other words, he had a choice. He could have either made it look like Guerrero was tying him up, because Guerrero was like Bone Crusher Smith against Mike Tyson, right? Couldn't stop him otherwise, had to hug him, right? After a while, Guerrero would have been penalized for excessive holding. That's the other thing, too. Aydin needs a better ring presence. He needs to, get the fans involved. He needs to look at the referee when he's being held. He needs to, kind of like imply, come on, this guy's not fighting me, right? You see Carl Froch fights where Froch literally goes like this, has his arms out when he feels he's being excessively held, right? Aydin should have done that. He should have played to the judges, right? And if he felt Guerrero was getting tired and was trying to hold him to, take a break, he should have knocked Guerrero's hands down. Should have moved away from Guerrero. Should have made it be obvious that Guerrero was the one trying to hold him, not vice versa, and he wasn't going to give Guerrero a break. Aydin didn't do those things. And because he doesn't operate with a jab and he can't match the volume of his opponent, if he doesn't get a knockout, he's vulnerable to losing on the scorecards, and that's exactly what he did. I encourage Aydin to go back to those Mike Tyson films and see how Tyson literally, forced opponents to wrap him up and literally was able to play to the crowd a bit to kind of make it look like he wanted to fight. But the guy in front of him did not. Also, he needs to see how Tyson literally would throw punches to a guy's body when he was right up on him. He also needs to develop the kind of power punches with his left that Mike Tyson had. Keep in mind, Aydin's a one-handed fighter, right? He knocks you out with the right hand. Mike Tyson could knock you out, quite frankly, with either hand, right? Finally, he needs to look at the film. He needs to count how many times he landed uppercuts on Guerrero. Then he needs to ask himself why he didn't make the uppercut the centerpiece of his strategy. He should have just been throwing uppercuts. Even if the uppercut missed, it would have established him as the aggressive fighter, right? He needs to figure out why he got tied up and had the uppercut taken away from him at times in this fight. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. I think both of these guys are forces at 147 pounds. I was impressed with Aydin at 147 pounds, and Guerrero, I think, has a very advanced skill level. I thought this was a noteworthy fight. I'd love to hear from you about it. Right? Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for watching. Come on.